Your city has an economic development office and they have a strategic plan, maybe. They ran a visioning process, hired a consultant. They built a website, stock photos of a lot of smiling people and hard hats. They've got a tagline. And your downtown still has empty storefronts. There's a reason for that, and it's not what they told you. I'm Kevin Crowder, founder of businessflare. This is street economics, where we're not Ivy League. Our PhD is from the streets. Economic developers measure what is easy to measure a lot of the time. Square footage, job announcements, ribbon cuttings, businesses that are recruited from somewhere else. They count inputs. And a lot of the times, city managers or elected officials call those inputs outcomes. But what they really don't measure is what's already happening in your city without them. We've talked in episodes about just finding those hidden assets that people don't even know, those meaningful stories that need to be told. Things like the bar that doubles its revenue on a Friday night and nobody even asks why. A food truck that does its best month in a neighborhood that supposedly was dead. The parking lot that fills up for something City Hall didn't organize, doesn't even know about. This is activity that's real, and the economic impact from it is real. The measurement does not exist because nobody's looking for it. Nobody thought to measure it. But what happens when you actually look? February 21st, last Saturday, Southwest Miami, out in the suburbs, close to residential neighborhoods, there's a brewery. There was an event that cost $10 to attend, and 837 people showed up. They didn't ask for a grant from the city to do it. It was not something listed in a strategic plan as a type of event someone should do. It was not based on an economic development initiative. But when we used Placer AI and pulled the foot traffic data, what we found was average household incomes of $99,000. 39% of the attendees earn over $100,000 a year. They spent 148 minutes at the location, 2.5 hours. That's not a quick stop. That is a destination. That is meaning. When we talk about economic development, we define it as creating places people want to be. 148 minutes outside of a craft brewery, that is a destination. When we looked at the top 10 zip codes of residents, a zip code in Manhattan ranked 9th in the origin locations. People flew to Miami and they ended up spending a Friday night in suburbia at a $10. The businesses around that corridor, they had no idea this event was going on. The restaurants nearby probably don't realize why Friday outperformed. The gas stations didn't know who these customers are. There's a bar in Coral Gables where a lot of them showed up, and even one in Miami Beach where a lot of people showed up. And that post-visit data and those places got that secondary spin. They're never going to connect the reason to it being an event that happened 4 or more miles away. This is the invisible economic activity that happens in real places. These are the real dollars, and these are the real people, and these are the real impact. This is what matters, not the 60,000 foot, oh, we got a big headquarters. Oh, another financial firm moved to what we want to be Wall Street to the south, or whatever it is. This is real neighborhoods, real people, real businesses, real tribes, real customers. It's completely outside of the measurement system that economic development offices use to justify their budgets. Now, here's why it matters beyond one Friday night. There's 2 local economies, a consumption economy and a production economy. A consumption economy, it's valid. It's got valid customers. It's got valid businesses, but it's built on businesses that serve local demand. It's restaurants and it's bars, it's service workers, it's people who trade hours for dollars. It's the cover band version. It's the fast food franchise version. They're not creating anything that can leave the city, nothing to be exported. The economy, it's a closed loop and it stays small. There's no intellectual property created. The production economy, however, creates something that can be sold outside of the city limits. It is that intellectual property. It is that expertise, that creativity, that innovation, the things all cities say that they want when they talk about economic development visions. It's a product or a scene that draws people in from somewhere else rather than just serving the people that are there. And so the difference between a city that grows and a city that stagnates, almost sometimes between a Losersville and a Winnersville, is almost which of these 2 economies is it actually built? And most cities think they're building production economies when they're actually building consumption economies. because nobody measures the right thing. Now, Tampa, Florida has a case study that nobody talks about, but is the best example there is of this. But they don't talk about it because it doesn't fit the model, because either they're scared about it or they misunderstand it or they're just not familiar with it and they've got preconceived, inaccurate notions about it. But in the late 1980s, a recording studio called More Sound and a producer named Scott Burns created a signature sound for a genre of music. Original bands were working in a specific style. Swedish bands came to Tampa to record. Norwegian bands, Brazilian bands. The expertise was there and nowhere else in the world. So the world came to Tampa. There's no city initiative behind this. There's no grant behind this, no consultant facilitating and saying, we have to do this. There was a venue, a producer, and original bands who built a global export economy in a city that didn't have any idea it was happening. And they took this music, they took it around the world, and they turned it into multiple subgenres. This was a production economy. It was invisible to the people whose job it was to build one. So the question for your city is, what's already happening that nobody's measuring? What is already generating economic activity in neighborhoods that your strategic plan doesn't recognize or even mention? What is drawing people from outside your trade area that doesn't show up in your economic development report or your market analysis? What entrepreneur built something that works while consultants were still running focus groups to try and be the second best at something else, reading case studies from somewhere else? The data exists. We use Placer AI to look at exactly who showed up. And you can do that to see who shows up to anything, where they came from, how long they stayed, where they went before and after. It's not expensive proprietary intelligence in the long run. This is location analytics data that any practitioner can access and should be accessing. But the problem is not the data. The problem is the question that's not being asked. The problem is the mentality framework in which economic development work. They're often measuring what they built. They're measuring things that can be measured in the past that don't necessarily mean anything about where they can go, but they're not measuring what's already there that they're not seeing. The next breakthrough in your city might already be happening. It's happening in a garage. It's happening in a bar. It's happening out on the edge of downtown or in a brewery parking lot on Saturday night. Your job is to plan it and your job is to see it. So to close, there were 837 people, $99,000 average household income, staying 2.5 hours in suburbia in Southwest Miami on Saturday night. Manhattan sitting people. Coral Gables got the after show spin. Corridor businesses had a great Friday without knowing why, and the city had nothing to do with it. It's not an argument against economic development. It's an argument for economic development that starts with honest measurement and looking at our real places, not the shiny towers or the strategic plans built on things that nobody's tracking and aren't meaningful on the ground. Figure out what's already working in your city. You might find out that you don't have the economic development problem that you thought you had. What you have is a visibility problem. Go over to our companion channel, Music Cities, and you'll find it right there in the most current episode. This is Street Economics. Let's do it. See ya.